Hey guys, welcome back to a legacy recording. So, I was thinking to myself the other day, I was like, we were talking about Windows 2000 and Windows XP, and the nostalgia kind of caught up with me, realizing that I remember installing it for the first time after upgrading from my Windows 98 SE machine. I guess, God, at that point I was probably about 19. Just got home from school, realized I had to write a paper. Um, And keep in mind, at this time, the internet as it exists now didn't really exist. There was no Google. Google existed, but it wasn't really like it is now. You didn't Google anything. If you were lucky, you used Metacrawler, which worked with your Netscape Navigator to connect to the internet and do searches. But searches were slow. Most people still had dial-up internet connections, and if you were lucky, you got 48.8 connection speed, and that was down. Up was a completely different story. Um, at that time, you figure you would download an MP3 file, and your MP3 file downloads would take sometimes 10, 15 minutes to download a 2, 3 meg file at mid-grade sound quality. Uh, so, I mean, without further ado, welcome to 2001. So when you got your brand new Gateway 2000 machine that was delivered, it came with Microsoft Bob. Microsoft Bob would automatically launch when you first connected to your system. During that time, you would knock on Microsoft Bob's door, and you would get a pop-up on the right-hand side that would give you an options panel, and you'd get the Microsoft Bob dog. The dog would give you instructions as to how to use your brand new Gateway 2000 Windows 2000 machine. Um, you could also play with the dog and rub the dog's belly and do other things with the dog, just like you could with the dog, which was kind of interesting and kind of entertaining. But Microsoft Bob was one of the applications to teach you how to use your Microsoft Windows 2000 machine that you would have bought on your Gateway 2000 system. So we'll exit out of here. Yes. When you would sign in, you would also usually be greeted by your startup screen. Remember, in this time, we all used AOL Instant Messenger to communicate. Some people used Yahoo Messenger to communicate, but in doing that, you usually use the AOL AIM to send chat messages. AIM was more interesting than the Yahoo because you had the ability to use something called Badass Buddy, which at the time was a website you could download these little buddy icons that would throw snowballs or make inappropriate comments or jokes or things that were just off kilter, which made it interesting and fun when you were younger. AOL, obviously, at this point, the AOL Instant Messenger is dead. It's been dead for a while now, and I don't think people have used it for a long, long time. But this was before social media, so there was no Instagram, there was no Facebook, there was no even MySpace didn't exist yet. So AOL Instant Messenger was really the communications tool to actually communicate and have fun and talk to people when you were not physically able to talk to them. Also, keep in mind at this time, cell phones were really still kind of in their infancy. People had them. Matter of fact, I had one at the time, but it was over $100 a month, and that was where you got a finite amount of text messages you could send, and it was free to make calls, but only after 9 o'clock at night. So if you were talking to somebody during the day, it would chew up your minutes, and your bill could be astronomically high if you were popular. Um, if you didn't have AOL Instant Messenger, then usually we would run Trillian. Trillian is the secondary application. That would give you the ability to integrate with all of your communication tools. So you'd have all your chat clients in one place to use your AOL, your Yahoo, and everything in one location. It was pretty popular at some point. A lot of people used them, and it may still even be continued to be used as it could still work with IRC chat, and that's something that still may exist out there. I don't know if people use it anymore or not. It's been a long time. Since we didn't really have the internet, there was no like Office 365 products. There was no integrations into any cloud. That didn't exist yet. Um, That said, we did have options as far as Microsoft Word was concerned. Corel was a big company. They used to provide WordPerfect. WordPerfect was a competitor of Microsoft Word and Microsoft Office products. Um, I think they pretty much died in the 2000s. I know that they still exist as a shell company, but they're not anywhere near as popular as they were in the 2000s. But that would give you the ability to write your papers. It still gave you the same kind of functionality as the Microsoft Office products, but it was an alternative. It was something that was competitive, and it really was competitive because there were times that Corel had more people using it and WordPerfect than Microsoft had people using Office, where today that's almost unheard of. Um, we also had no real way of doing searches because keep in mind, if you did searches, they were slow. So when you had to look something up, there was no Wikipedia. You had to use actual encyclopedias, and generally speaking, you went to the library. But some people got lucky and they got the ability to purchase Microsoft Encarta. And what Microsoft Encarta it was a full-blown encyclopedia that you would download and put on your machine. Encarta existed for about 6 years. You could still get it. At this point, it's open source abandonware, so you could download it. And it still runs on Windows 10 if you ever wanted to use it. Obviously, most of the information is 25 plus years old at this point, but a lot of the information is still relevant. And if you don't have a fast internet connection, you need to write papers. This is a great product to use. It's actually sad to me that they don't still develop this because it really was a fantastic product. But this is how you would look up information. You would find it in your encyclopedias, and since encyclopedias, even at that time, like a Britannica, was extremely expensive, Encarta gave you the option to have a digital encyclopedia at your fingertips, which for people like myself who had to write papers in the beginning years of college, this was a fantastic tool to have to do it. Well, when you weren't doing schoolwork, obviously you had to do something to keep with the times, have fun. So we had Napster. Napster was, well, I'm sure everybody out there knows Napster. Napster was a product used to download music. And at the time, before Metallica got involved, before Snoop got involved and started arguing about copyright infringements and things of that, most of the kids and people who used them at the time had no idea that it was not legal to download music. Because at the time, you figure when you were a kid, you would have friends, everybody would have music that they would listen to, and they would get them on cassette or they would get them on CD, and people would just take those cassettes or CDs and they would dub them. They would create copies of them. Used to be able to use the cassette players that were built into your boom boxes to record directly off the radio. So you would have your radio playing and it would record your cassette, and you would have the music then that way. So at the time, we didn't really think anything of it downloading the music because everybody was doing it anyway. They were just using the cassette player to do it from the radio. And even to this day, in comparison of downloading music off, let's say, iTunes and purchasing it that way, I still prefer to buy the physical media. So going out and buying a CD or, obviously not a cassette anymore, but, LPs are coming back. They're more accessible, records, so purchasing them is still my favorite way to actually get the music, just so you get the high quality music. But at the time, again, when you're a kid, had no idea. And Napster existed probably for 5 or 6 years before they started getting shut down, and then eventually Morpheus and Kazaa took over, and then you knew that you weren't supposed to be doing, but people still downloaded music. At this point, I think I have thousands of CDs that I've collected from the music that I downloaded as a kid, just because when you get older and you get nostalgic, you want the actual physical jewel case, you want all the information. So what I think actually really happened is I don't own any Metallica CDs because they ruined my fun. But at the same time, I do own all of the CDs for all the music that I as a kid downloaded, not knowing that I wasn't supposed to download it. So at any rate, I digress. The browser of choice wasn't really Firefox. It wasn't Google Chrome. That didn't exist. There were alternatives out there, but the majority of people used either Internet Explorer or used Netscape Navigator. And most people used Netscape Navigator, which really was one of the better alternatives out there as far as browsing was concerned. this really gave you the functionality of going to websites and seeing things how they looked at the time, which was much different. You didn't have these big downloads. There weren't too many ads on pages. You would get flash ads every now and then, but they were very small because the connection speed wasn't that great. So they wanted you to go to the website, and if there was too much junk on their websites, the websites wouldn't load because your connection speed wasn't fast enough to load the sites. So they really didn't make the sites too flashy. There wasn't too much there. You had a couple links, usually a white background. Links would take you to specific sites of the page, mostly text-based. It was very rudimentary. It wasn't like it is now and how things look now. But it functioned, and it was really just used for information that you couldn't get anywhere else, and communication, but not what the internet has turned into today. It was nowhere near as full with as many web pages, and accessing the pages was more difficult too because there was no Google, there was no analytics, you didn't have those links. You used an application called Metacrawler, or a browser, or like a search engine called Metacrawler. Metacrawler, what it did is it crawled all of the major sites like AOL, Yahoo, Jeeves. I guess Ask Jeeves at that time, and then I guess it was Ask, and then it was Jeeves. I don't know what it is anymore. They kept changing their name, I think, which is what ruined their popularity. But at any rate, so it would search all of the different websites, and it would provide you with the links from the websites, and then it would give you the top links first. So if you had the 3 links all existed pointing to the same location from all 3 browsing providers, it would give that as the top link. And that was really the real early ability to Google something, was to metacrawl it, which worked fantastic. So when you didn't have those things and you weren't chatting with your friends and you weren't listening to music, there wasn't really streaming. There was a website out there that used to exist called Shoutcast, which integrated into Winamp, and it would give you the ability to watch movies and music off the internet. But they weren't like today's movies. I mean, most of them, you could barely make out what the actual video looked like. Most of these machines had, if you were lucky, 64 megs of video RAM. They weren't designed to do high-definition video by any stretch of the imagination. But what you could do, too, is obviously play games. So we had Quake, and we had Doom, and we had TFX, Tactical Fighting Experiment, which was like a F-14 fighting game. We even had Oblivion on these machines that worked and functioned, and the original Grand Theft Auto was around that same time period. But that's what these systems were great for. Nero for burning CDs. Sonic worked great for burning CDs or ripping CDs. We used to create music mix CDs where we would have stuff that you could fade into one album, into another album, into a different song, and back into the first song, and you could create 3D sounds and effects in the music from these applications. These are things that I think even today are kind of missing, that realistically I probably would still use the Nero application and the Sonic application today. When I used my own CDs and I decided I wanted to make a mix, you could create mixtapes based off of your applications and software that came preloaded with your Windows operating system. Not like today where you get just bloatware and ads and junk. That wasn't the case back then. There was a quality to these machines, a quality to the products, and they were just well engineered, well designed, and well thought out. Something that I think is completely missing from the new computer. It's become, everything's like a Walmart kind of poorly developed scenario machine, and it's not the same. Anyway, thanks for taking a blast to the past with me. Welcome to the world of 2000, 2001, and really 2002. And then prior, Windows-based access and usability. I hope this was entertaining for some of you guys, or a kick back to how things used to be. I would love to hear some comments of some of you people that have used the Windows 2000 stuff when it was new, and things that you miss and wish that they still existed, so we could all reminisce together. I hope you guys enjoyed this, and you guys have a good one. Like and subscribe, and I'll keep them coming.